So recently there's been an influx in the amount of cheap Chinese Hall effect keyboards flooding the market. We're talking about like under $50 Chinese keyboards, and they claim to be as good, if not better, than the competitors like Wooting. I for one actually support buying a good keyboard from a reputable company, be it Chinese or not. But sometimes we can't afford to spend premium. So I bought some Chinese Hall effect keyboards so that we can test them in this video. So funny enough, I actually spent $172.13 for all 6 of these keyboards. So this stack costs the same price as one Wooting 68 HE. Just to put things into perspective. Well, most of the keyboards here aren't even $35. So today we're going to be testing these 6 Hall effect keyboards to see which one is the best one among the cheap Chinese keyboards. And we're probably going to put up a tier list of like how good they are. So off camera, I did test the keyboards with my backup PC first before I plugged it into my main PC, just to make sure none of the keyboards are like keyloggers or had any viruses. Just wanted to put it out there because I know at least one guy in the comments is gonna be like, oh my god, these Chinese keyboards are just keyloggers.
Oh, I don't sound like that.
And yeah. First keyboard. So this is the Womier M68 HE. This keyboard came in at the price of $23.71. Ooh, the packaging is really bad. So they didn't actually give any spare boxes or anything, which is good, I guess. Saved the environment. They gave extra switches, which is nice. It resembles a keyboard, but for $23, feels pretty good. Oh wait, I just realized. The legends are on the side, but they're so faint, black on black, so you just can't see them. Okay, feels pretty good. Next keyboard. Also, you might be wondering, how did I get all these keyboards at such a cheap price? And that's because I actually paid for them in the same currency that they were sold in. And that's thanks to my Revolut card. And you can actually get $30 cash back if you use my link in the description and sign up today. So I do actually use Revolut and have been for the longest time ever. If you don't believe me, this is the first generation Revolut card with the old logo. So yes, I actually am one of their first few users, and keyword user, not just promoter. So Revolut is a financial super app which allows me to skip the lines and money changers, all while getting a better rate than most regular cards. So whether I'm in Singapore, or if I'm in Japan, or even in Taiwan, this is real by the way guys, I'm not actually in a green screen, I can easily spend my money because Revolut converts my currency to the currency I need in over 150 countries, which is actually the main reason why I use Revolut. You might have also noticed I'm carrying a special card, which is also metal by the way. It's fully customizable, and you know, as a graphic designer myself, I had to go ham. I think I should quit my job. With Revolut, I can spend money, save money, and also stay safe online with one-time use disposable cards that regenerate their numbers every time you use them. It's actually so safe, I left my card number in the Japan vlog, fully uncensored. Did I mention no ATM fees charged by Revolut? Up to a certain amount according to your plan at least. To get $30 cash back if you use my link or this QR code. And yeah, thank you Revolut for sponsoring this video. Welcome back. So next keyboard, we got the Mars 68. Once again, there's no internal packaging for the wires at all, so it's kind of just like loose articles. This keyboard came in at $28.35. Wait, they lied. This keyboard was advertised to have tri-mode wireless, and it's not a wireless keyboard. Well, off to a great start. Build-wise, oh wow, this one actually feels pretty solid. Compared to the last one, I can't even bend this one. Oh. Wait, this actually feels really good. What switches are these? I don't actually know what they are. They feel really smooth out of the box too. So unlike the other keyboard, you can actually see the side legends on this keyboard. Alright, next keyboard. Okay, so this is the Aula Hero 68 HE. Okay. First box to actually have like little dividers so that the tools they give don't just fly. These are the stuff they gave in the box. Chinese manual. So this is the keyboard. Weirdest keyboard. The power port's actually on the side. Ooh, it's a nice backing. It's made of metal or something. This is the second most expensive keyboard out of the bunch today, but it really shows in its material because wow, this is a thing. Oh wow, this keyboard feels so good. Next keyboard. USB wire and a keycap puller and the keyboard. Oh, it's one of those Wooting clones. There's a huge scratch going on the top of my keyboard and like at the side here. You know, it's really nice to have on a brand new keyboard. This keyboard comes in at $31.21, so it's on the pricier side. It's at a really weird angle to type on. It's like kind of like flat. The build of the keyboard is actually really nice. Keycap wise, it's using a really cheap keycap, but it's clean. Nothing really too special about this keyboard. It's kind of just like a Wooting clone, but in the 68% layout. Next keyboard. This is the cheapest keyboard among all. Comes in at only $19.70. It feels really cheap. It feels like raw plastic, which is uncoated. Stabilizers are really good though. That was one thing I actually liked about this one. Next keyboard. This is probably my most hated keyboard. I've already reviewed it, but we'll review it with an open mind. This is the Mad Lion Mad 60 HE. It is basically a one-to-one clone of the Wooting 60 HE with inferior keycaps and inferior specs. So this is the most expensive among the bunch. It came in at $36.61. However, build-wise, it does actually feel similar to the Wooting. I actually really like the sound of this keyboard. So it is a good keyboard, I just hate it because, you know, of the whole blatant copying thing. So yeah, these are the 6 Hall effect keyboards that we're reviewing, and I'm gonna be testing them a lot.
Hi.
So it's been a few days, I've been testing out all the keyboards back to back. I made sure to play a game of CS with all of them, and no, it doesn't mean that if I was bad at one round, it means that this keyboard is just trash. But it was a good indicator to find out if a keyboard had a deal breaker, which we will get into. I forgot to mention, but all the keyboards were tested with rapid trigger on and the actuation point set at 0.5 millimeters. So let's start the review with the Mars 68. It comes in at $28.35, and it was advertised to have a 1000 Hz polling rate, so one of the lower end keyboards in this range. So let's start off with the software. This keyboard's driver was terrible, like it was a complete mess. Ooh. One actually changed the actuation point and the other one changed the rapid trigger thing, which you couldn't just activate rapid trigger. And if you messed with one, it messed with the rest, so it was really confusing. Honestly, I still don't know what the third one did until today, so... Plus, you can't actually change the polling rate for this keyboard. And remember when I said it was advertised as 1000 Hz polling rate? This keyboard actually polled at 8000 Hz. So this was not a 1000 Hz keyboard. This is an 8000 Hz keyboard. It doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's good to know that, you know, we will falsely advertise that. Speaking of falsely advertised, we will also advertise this keyboard as a tri-mode wireless keyboard, which is clearly not a wireless keyboard at all. So it was basically a straight up scam, good and bad, because we were, you know, scammed for the whole polling rate thing. But I'll blame that on the shop that I bought it from. The keys are really stable and I like them a lot actually. Like this keyboard was starting to grow on me. Gaming wise, it had no qualms, you know, it was an ordinary Hall effect keyboard. So I'm putting this at B tier. If not for the software, this could have been like an A tier or an S tier. Alright, next keyboard. This is the Womier M68 HE. This keyboard was reviewed a lot, and I actually have a bunch of you guys wanting me to try this. Wasn't too happy with this keyboard. This keyboard came in at $23.71. This keyboard also boasts 8000 Hz polling rate, but the software. This took 3 whole minutes to load the driver, which kind of sucked. And then immediately after loading the driver, they asked me to calibrate it, which is fine. The driver does look good, but it's funny because they called rapid trigger as fast trigger, lost in translation somewhere. And the whole brightness and color thing was kind of weird. Setting this keyboard to max brightness, it still was hard to see each keycap, and for some reason the RGB setting had a separate toggle for colorful, where when you turn it off it finally goes into white, even though I set it as white on the color wheel. So it was a weird driver, but you know, I digress. The driver for this keyboard did look better than the rest, but it wasn't the most intuitive thing. But this keyboard had a deal breaker. Whilst I was playing with this keyboard, I would have random moments where I would just start shift walking out of nowhere and then it would just go away. And mind you, my finger was not even on the shift key. Like, I know there's some instances where you just like accidentally press it, but my finger was not on the shift key. It happened more than once and it got really annoying. So random inputs is not a good thing for a keyboard, and this instantly made it an F tier. Don't buy this garbage. Next, keyboard. The Aula Hero 68 HE. $32.65, so it's more on the pricey side, but you know, it clearly shows. 8000 Hz polling rate, and I would say it's my favorite sounding keyboard out of the bunch because it actually sounds like a premium mechanical keyboard. But that's kind of where the goods end. The driver for this keyboard is half complete. It has missing assets, and if you would plug the keyboard out while you're on the driver, it kind of just shows like this weird text and image. So there is a weird amount of lag in the software. Whenever I change the actuation by increments, it has this weird amount of lag, which is probably because it's updating the keyboard on the fly. That's why you add an apply button. But the bads don't stop there. There is a bigger problem with this keyboard, and that is the spacebar. So this spacebar, with no special add-ons enabled like DKS or like rapid trigger, registers a double input. It will register input going down, and then when you release it, it registers a second input when it resets, which is kind of what DKS does, but this is without DKS turned on. And I found out this only actually happens when the keyboard's actuation point is set past 1.3 millimeters. So I'm assuming that it's too sensitive or something, and then whenever you release, it just like does that. Also, in the calibration software, you can't calibrate the spacebar correctly. There's something wrong about the switch or something about the placement of the Hall effect sensor that it just doesn't register it going all the way topping out. And if you set the actuation past 1.3 millimeters, it kind of defeats the whole point of having a Hall effect keyboard, because you know, you want that actuation point that's variable. So I did play games on this, you know, I set it at 1.3 millimeters. It was good while gaming, but this is really unacceptable from a keyboard, so F tier. Next keyboard, the Mad 60 HE from Mad Lion. Huge amount of controversy behind this, probably because of me, you know, it was only because of my video. But beyond the controversy, this keyboard was $36.51. It has 1000 Hz polling rate, so it's not really fair amongst the 8000 Hz polling rate keyboards, but I'm pretty sure you get more delay playing a game online with the delay in ping rather than getting from a peripheral. This keyboard has the nicest software amongst the 6, but it did also take quite a while to load into the driver. However, this keyboard actually has, I would say, the worst key wobble among all the keyboards. Like, if you put your hands on the keys and just start shaking it, it wobbles a ton. And if you don't believe me, this actually does contribute to gameplay because the confidence you get using the keyboard is affected when it's just like shaking around like that. It is one of the better sounding keyboards, I'm not gonna lie. But if you're spending $36, I would highly recommend you getting something else, so C tier. Next, keyboard. So the Shark X68 HE, $31.21, and it pulls at 8000 Hz. But let's be real, the keyboard's drivers look like ass. Probably the worst among the group. And it has a really confusing layout, like I don't know what's going on here. Well, the driver's website is in Chinese, so it's probably like really bad translation somewhere, but even so, look at the logo, it's so small. It also kept asking me to download new drivers, which I will not. And I couldn't find the 8000 Hz polling rate settings, so it wasn't in the drivers. But it does pull at a true 8000 Hz, so good. Well, despite the driver issues, this probably is one of the better keyboards for the gaming side. It felt snappy with minimal input lag, and I kinda popped off in games with this keyboard. So if you can ignore the ugly ass drivers with this keyboard, it's a solid A tier. And finally, the last keyboard, the MChose A60 HE. Coming in at $19.61, and with a polling rate of 1000 Hz. Again, not fair amongst the keyboards, but you know, it doesn't really make a difference. The drivers for this keyboard look good and they work well, and for the gameplay, it's good. Low latency and snappy feeling. And this being the cheapest keyboard, it definitely is obvious when you feel it. It's kind of the most average plastic keyboard you can ever find. The material cost for this keyboard is so low that when I was pulling out the switches to switch them out, 3 of the 4 switches I pulled out broke. But it's not like you're pulling out switches every single day, so I wouldn't... There's a plane going by. But you're not going to be pulling out the switches every day, so it's not going to be a big deal. It did, however, referencing my previous video on this keyboard, brick itself after using for 5 days. And that's because the firmware just decided that it didn't want to work. And I did fix it by plugging it in DFU mode and then reinstalling the firmware into the keyboard. But that kind of shows you that it's not really reliable because it can just kind of break itself whenever. But after updating the firmware, it did work fine and it gamed pretty well. So for the price and for everything, I'm gonna put this in B tier. So it is a really good option if you're going for the ultra cheapest budget build, but if you can spend like $10 more, I'm pretty sure you can get a way better option. So what is my conclusion with all the keyboards in front of me? Well, firstly, I don't want to play CS anymore. I played so much of CS, oh my god. So since the Shark is the best rated keyboard here, does that win my recommendation? Not really. I think we're in the time that Hall effect keyboards are going through that exploration stage, where big companies are slowly getting into Hall effect. Let's take a look at the scene of custom keyboards. 2 years ago, anything under $200 would be considered crap, and now it's almost impossible to find a bad custom keyboard under $100. So I think that's going to be happening with the same as Hall effect keyboards. We're just going through that exploration motion of like what works and what doesn't. And so my point is, if you're on a really tight budget and you really want the cutting edge Hall effect feel, the Shark does get my recommendation. It's pretty good. You can try that out. But other than that, maybe wait like 6 months down the line and you're probably going to see some crazy Hall effect keyboards come out. Or even T&C keyboards. Those are really good. Or if you do have the budget right now and you want to get something more reliable, you can get something like a Wooting or a Newfie. Or, and this is my personal favorite option, you can just stick with the keyboard you have right now. It's crazy. You don't need to buy a new keyboard. These keyboards, Hall effect, and any analog keyboard in general is not going to make you better at your game. The differences that Hall effect keyboards make are so minute that a casual gamer like you or me will probably not even feel it. So no, a Hall effect keyboard does not make or break a gamer. Oh, unless you play Osu, you know, then get a Hall effect keyboard if you play Osu.